Welcome back, puppies, to another Barking Dog Studio video. So, I'm going to be painting these three Admechs from 40K. Painting up three Rangers. And this is kind of the introductory video to what's going to be a new series of videos painting these guys up. And then some Gene Stealer hybrids. I got a bunch more hybrids to paint. So probably what I'm going to do is, rather than make a video of me painting all three of them, they're all three going to have the same paint scheme, so I'm probably just going to have a video demonstrating one or following the progress of just one miniature. When it comes to the Gene Stealers, I may work that a little differently because there's different poses. There's just a lot more variety with them and with their leader. But again, there's going to be a lot of consistency even with these guys. So it'll probably just, I really don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but like, say this guy, I might have a video covering how I did his bone sword and his whip. But then, like some of these other guys, like this cutter here, this rock cutter, I might do a video over how I plan on doing his face shield there. And then I'll have another video maybe covering the skin tone for one. Here's a flamer. And these guys look pretty cool, actually. They're a lot of fun to put together, and I'm kind of figuring out my paint scheme. The person I'm painting these for already gave me kind of an idea of what they wanted, like for the coats. Basically, they wanted red on the inside and kind of a hazard orange on the outside. And the rest is kind of up to me, so I've been kind of brainstorming about what I'm going to do. Been looking at images online, I'm not going to lie. That's where some of the inspiration came from. I'm not totally copying something I found offline, but I did lift a couple of ideas. I might change up the color a little bit though, but basically their pants are probably going to get gray. And I was just kind of picking out my gray colors. So, yeah. Looking forward to getting some paint on these guys. So I need to get my wet palette going and finish getting ready to actually paint for a few hours this morning. So I'm going to put the video on pause while I do that, and I'll be back in just a moment. And we're back. So this is the miniature that's going to be kind of featured in the video. And here at the last minute I kind of changed up what I was going to do. Originally I was going to go with a couple of these P3 paints and make the pants on the guy, because that's the first thing I'm going to paint. I was going to make them kind of a gray, but at the last minute I changed it up a little bit, and what I'm going to do is, since they were primered with the Badger primer, and it's a red primer. To me it looks very orange, but it's actually, I think, the red primer. And then of course I hit it with some Game Air from Vallejo to start bringing it up into actual orange spectrum. Well, I guess backing up, when I did the primer coat, I actually mixed in a little bit of black with the orange, and it gives it a very dark kind of red look. Actually almost brown if you mix in too much black, but it turned out red. I got the mixture right, and so I primered them red before I glued them to the base. After the guys were assembled, I just kind of laid them down, primed, made sure I got the under or inside of the coats all red. So what that did is it left their legs all red too, because they were all assembled. So now, to try to knock out some of the red and start bringing some of the other colors into, well, different colors, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this Troll Blood highlight from P3 as kind of a base coat on the pants, and turn it into a kind of a gray. And then I'm going to come in with the Menoth white base, and then I'm going to highlight it up to Menoth white highlight. But then, after all that's said and done, I'm going to use some Agrax Earthshade and knock it down. Now, I actually may end up using some of the Nuln oil instead, but the pants are basically going to get a wash. And that may be after I come back in and paint the metal bits too. We'll just have to see how it goes. I might do the Agrax Earthshade, then paint the metal bits, because they have these little like connection points on their pants, and they have some knee pads and some other armor. And once I get that painted up, then I may come in and hit their entire legs again with the Nuln oil. So they may end up getting both washes. Well, alright, let's get started. Let's open up some P3 Troll Blood Highlight here. Shake it up real good. Make sure I'm on camera. See if I can zoom in just a little bit more for you here. Still in focus good? Looks that way. So I don't play 40K. And yeah, I just got some paint on the knee pad, but that's okay. It's a very tight area to paint. Knee pads will get painted. After everything else here on their pants. Looks like there's a couple of purity seals. I don't know what I'm going to do with those yet, other than paint them, of course. Right now I'm just trying to get into the pants there and not get any on the coat. I did debate painting some of this before the assembly, and then I debated on putting these guys on corks without the bases, just pinning them. Ultimately I decided against that because their ankles are so small. I just didn't feel comfortable pinning them. Honestly, in retrospect, I could have done it, because the pins don't even have to go on the feet very far to be effective. Yeah, so sometimes just to get my point back, I'm not a brush licker. What I do is there's some of the beads of water that are on my wet palette. I'll just go over and kind of use those to reshape the tip of the brush. The reason why I'm not a brush licker is because occasionally I work with enamels, and if you're a brush licker and you've ever licked your brush after it's been dipped in enamel paint, it's not a pleasant experience, and it will actually break you of being a brush licker. And yeah, I might have a little bit of experience there. I might know what I'm talking about. Alright, so there's the base, and basically what that did was a good coverage of that, especially because it's not too watered down. I used it straight out of the pod, as you saw. It gave me good coverage over the red pants. Just knocked everything down to a gray. And like where earlier, for that, you saw me kind of going up in there. Because that is going to be so dark and so shadowed, and it will get hit with a wash later, I'm actually not going to worry about highlighting anything up in there. But I am going to throw down some of this Minoff White base. And again, I'm not putting any on the wet palette. I'm not thinning it out. I'm using it straight out of the pot. Now to knock off some of the excess, I do go over to my wet palette a little bit, but this is really, make sure I'm on camera, Just really get in the areas where it's very visible. Alright, there's some quick pants. I'm going to let that set up for a little bit before I put the final highlight on it. And then I'll come back and start painting on some of the metal bits on his legs. Maybe I'll back that out a little bit so I don't keep winding up off camera so much. Well, alright, I'm going to pause the video here and be back in a sec. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm going to highlight the pants with this Menoth base highlight from P3. And since the pants are largely shadowed and covered up on these models, I'm not going to do a whole lot. I got the good coverage with the gray and the Menoth white base. So I'm just going to come in and hit some of the rises on their pants, because they've got these kind of baggy pants that cover their thighs or the upper portion of their legs there. I'm just going to come in and hit some of the higher, more raised areas. Maybe get a little bit of water on my brush there. I'll take a dab of that and come over to the wet palette. Kind of moisten it up a little bit so it goes on just a little smoother. I'll let that dry for a minute. Actually, I might go ahead and start throwing some paint on the metal bits while we're waiting on that white to set up a little bit. The metal that I'm using to base coat the metal bits with is black metal from Scale Color. Actually, I think there's a little bit more pant there. I'm going to come back in and get some more of his pants. I think in the sculpt of the plastic right there, his knee and his pants kind of bleed together, but when I look at some of these other guys, the knee pad very obviously stops before joining down to what would be kind of like the boot or lower part of the leg. On this particular model right here, it kind of bleeds in to his shin, but I'm going to fix that with some paint, because the other leg doesn't do that, so it's much more defined where one ends and the pants begin. So let me correct that real quick. And for that, we're going to use off base. Just a nice little thick coating right here. Maybe not that thick. Maybe knock some of that paint off. There we go. Much better. Okay. Now back to painting metal bits. And of course I'll carry this theme through the rest of the model. For the metal, I'll be using that same scale color, black metal. I even plan on doing that for the rifle, but I don't know. I've kind of got my own paint scheme idea for the rifle. Nothing too crazy. Probably use some old Kentucky rifles for inspiration. You know, those old flintlock or percussion cap style rifles. My father, who's real into that stuff, told me that calling them Kentucky rifles, again, I'm not referring to these science fiction version, but the actual real life Kentucky rifles, he said technically they were oh, what other state was it? I want to say Tennessee. They weren't actually made in Kentucky, but what it was a lot of the trappers or people who were using them were following the Appalachian Mountains into Kentucky, and that's where other people first started seeing the rifles, and that's why they got the name Kentucky Rifle. But they were actually manufactured in a completely different state. These science fiction versions actually look pretty cool. They almost look like they got some kind of cylinder there. It's not really in line with the barrel. Anyways, it's a pretty cool design. I like it. Still not a big 40K guy, but I think these guys, not that I would object to painting a Space Marine. I've never painted a Space Marine, but these guys look like they're a lot more fun to paint than a Space Marine. I need to touch up his pants real quick in another little area where it looks like I forgot to paint, but now that I get to painting the middle part of his boot, looks kind of obvious up in there, so I just grabbed some of the paint that was on my wet palette. Alright. I have a little bit of the P3 paint on my wet palette where I'd go to knock off excess. You know where some guys will do it on their thumbs? I just tend to knock off the excess sometimes on my wet palette. Hit him with the Agrax Earthshade. Now again, this is mostly going over the pants, part of his leg, and not so much the metal part. Later, when I get the Nuln Oil, I may hit the entire leg with it. We'll just see. We'll just see how this looks. Come back in and paint that. See a little bit that I forgot there. So now I'm going to hit the metal bits with some Nuln Oil. And be careful not to knock it over. At least I wind up doing that and then have to post the obligatory picture of the mess online and share in the lamentation of all the other folks who use these GW products that wind up spilling them. I don't think a week goes by where I don't see somebody on a forum, or I say forum, actually, social media, between Twitter and Facebook. Somebody's always posting a picture making a mess. It's very easy to do. Make sure some of that wash gets down in there between his toes. I'm pretty happy with the way this is looking. I'm going to go ahead and do the other guys. Probably won't be a lot of these guys on film. Of course I say that, I don't know. We'll see. The idea here is just so not so much repetitive video footage. Ooh. Now, even though I have a wash on there, I have the base coat and then a wash, I will come back later and highlight some of the metal bits to show some wear. Probably not a whole lot, since especially like on these two guys where they're covered up, the highlighting will be very minimal. Like probably his belt and that little protective piece there over his pelvis area. And same with this guy, even our lead guy. The metal bits that get highlighted won't be a whole lot. Now when we get to the upper portion of the video, and part of why I am going to make different videos is there will be a lot more highlighting, and up here like around where his arms and his shoulders and his chest are, there'll be a couple of different metallic colors that I work with, because I think I'm going to make the man, I don't even know what it is because I'm not a 40K guy, but that chest piece that's got the skull on it, I might make that kind of a bronze, particular bronze color. So I got a couple of different ones. I've got a coppery bronze, then I've got this more, I like this bronze better. It's probably one of my favorite metal colors. Bronze from Model Color, just straight bronze. And there'll be washes, but when I go to paint the upper portion, I'll probably paint a base, a midtone, a highlight, and then wash everything. Alright. Well, it looks like the battery's getting low on the recorder, so it's probably a good place for me to pause it while I do a little bit of touch up. Not much. Actually, I might just do that right now. Let me see what I can do. Some doesn't look real even here to me. There we go. I thought I was going to go back in and have to hit that with the wash again too, but that actually blended right in. I don't think I will need to. Alright. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'd like to say thank you to the Clarks for their continued support. You can follow us on Facebook, and if you really like what we're doing here, you can support us on Patreon, and we are now also on Subscribestar. Bark on, puppies.